In this module, I'm going to do an introduction to BizFlow task. So as we've seen in previous modules, there are different ways to solve different process problems, and BizFlow has different tools and techniques to do that. The first thing that we saw was what I would classify as more traditional business process management, and this is what we see in other business process management tools. The ability to design and model a process to facilitate anything from very simple processes to extremely complex processes. And we also saw that BizFlow has a unique capability called Quick Process, and that allows a business user or business analyst to create more simplistic processes that can support serial routing and general review and approval types of processes without really the need for the heavy lifting of a more traditional BPM implementation. The last type of tool that BizFlow has to offer solves yet another type of process problem, and this tool is called BizFlow Task, and it was formerly called BizFlow Office Engine, so you'll see reference to that in the software in various places. But BizFlow Task is a lot like email. We use email every day to assign work to people, whether we think about it in those terms or not. But we use email and we ask people to do various things. But the problem with email is that we have no way to track that email. We have no visibility into what happens once we send it to someone. We can't associate deadlines to emails. We can't report on emails in terms of maybe how many assignments I've given someone on my team, right? I don't have real good ability to look at that and say, well, I've asked them to do 7 things. And with email, we also tend to use email where you may email one individual, and in order for them to accomplish that task, they will in turn forward that email or email others. So we end up with this kind of hierarchical breakdown of work or work activities. BizFlow Task was designed to very readily facilitate this type of tasking, subdelegation, and collaboration. Let's take a look then at BizFlow Task. Again, being logged into the BizFlow web client, I have the Start New menu, and in that menu, in addition to Quick Process and my more traditional business processes, I can also start a task. And I want to just focus on this little picture here for a moment. What we could see is that BizFlow Task allows an individual to task one or more individuals with some action that you want them to take. But those individuals can in turn subdelegate. They can take that same task or action and send that down to individuals and so on. And this can continue to occur. So there's really no limit to the degree to which subdelegation can occur. And then what happens is in order for this individual to complete their task and return it, the expectation is that any subdelegation that's been done will be returned to this individual. And in the same way that I can see this little picture here, you can monitor tasks using the My Task Monitor in BizFlow to track and see exactly how work is flowing. Let's go ahead and start a BizFlow task. You can see the screen looks a lot like an email. And what I can do then is assign someone to perform a task. Let's say we had a policy document that we wanted to get input on. And we don't really know how many people necessarily need to provide input to this policy. I'm going to assign then an individual to work on this policy. And I can establish a deadline, and I can attach the policy that I want to be reviewed. And as you can see, I could assign more individuals to this particular action, or simply send this item now to the individual I've assigned. So let's go ahead and do that. we can see that I've made one task assignment here into the student 1 assignee, and again I can create another task or simply close it. Now from the student 1's inbox, we can see that they've been assigned this task, and they would have also received an email. So BizFlow task, like Quick Process, can send an email and let you know that you have this task or action, and I can then simply open up the task that's been assigned. So similar to an email, I could have provided more additional guidance. I simply chose not to do that in the last step, but I can see please provide input to this policy. I can see the attached policy document, and I can simply open this policy document. I can attach other documentation. I can request clarification. I can do various things. But the key point is that at this point I could now add a subtask. If I weren't capable of performing or doing this particular task and I wanted to add or get input from other people, I could then set up additional assignments. At this point, perhaps I want input from 2 other students. So I can assign as many additional individuals that I want to get assistance from. And then I can send out the task. Now, of course, the thing that makes BizFlow tasking so powerful is I can log out now and go back in as the trainer. As the trainer who originally initiated this task, I have the ability to then monitor what's happening with that task. I can see that as the trainer, I assigned student 1 to this particular task, but I can also now see that student 1 assigned 2 other individuals to this task. The task view, this monitoring view, which I'll expand so we can see it a little larger, shows me exactly what's happening with this task. And as work gets completed, we'll see check marks and we'll see that the path goes back to the person who assigned it. As the owner or originator of this task, I can actually make changes. I can set the deadline differently. I can make comments on these actions right now. So I can collaborate with not only the person I assigned, but I could also potentially collaborate with people that individual has assigned. And of course, you can control who can do what downstream and across based on settings that you set up when you define the tasks. But again, it's all about having the ability and visibility into the assignments that are being made. And then of course, not only can I monitor the tasks, but I have reporting and information about the tasks. So I can look at all work perhaps that is, or that I've assigned in the last 30 days, and I can see if they're overdue. I can see how long these tasks have been outstanding. And so again, instead of using email to track or to assign work to individuals, you can use Office Engine to do that same type of thing. Not only can we use Office Engine for this kind of standalone approach or use, but we can also incorporate Office Engine into quick process activities, and we can incorporate it into traditional BPM or traditional BizFlow. And what I mean by that is that at a given step in one of those more structured processes, we can use Office Engine as a way to collaborate. Let me go ahead and explain or show that to you using our case management system. Here we have one of the sub-flows or sub-processes that make up our appeals and grievance case management system. And when we designed this application, we knew that certain types of grievances can be any type of grievance in this case. These are healthcare grievances, and someone could complain from anything to they didn't like the doctor's office, to something about their enrollment, to their billing, to their pharmacy, to all different kinds of things that they could complain about. And there was no way to really model all of the rules or paths that this kind of grievance could take. So in order to address that type of very ad hoc process, we at this step in the flow linked the Office Engine or tasking capability to this step. The applications that we see on this particular step in the flow include the resolution form. It includes outbound documents, but it also allows the user at this step to create a task, and that task is BizFlow tasking. We can link it to this step in the flow, and then the way that that is seen by the user, so we can link it to the step in the flow when we design the process, meaning we can have this highly structured process, but at this point we need to be very dynamic and collaborative. So we're going to incorporate tasking as part of this process. How then that translates to the end user, I'm going to show you now. I'm going to go and open up an existing case. And I'm going to select this grievance case because that's the process flow that we were looking at, and this is the activity, investigation and resolution action. I'm going to open up that particular action or step in the process. And I now see three different forms for this particular action. I have the resolution or the case form as I would, in my traditional process, but I also have a create task option. So now on this case, I can toggle from the traditional form that I'm inputting information or gathering information on, and I can go and out and assign various people to do something for this case. And then I can track and manage it. And when all of that activity is completed and done, I can of course move this process forward as I normally would in terms of handling the case. So this, you can see that you can then incorporate both structured process with unstructured and dynamic process and use them together to solve different types of process problems. Now that we've covered the basics, let's move on and let's build our first BizFlow process.